Hi everybody, this is Helen Lascaris from the Harvard University Employees Credit Union. I am a home loan specialist at the credit union, and I am here today to answer some common questions regarding the mortgage financing process. So the first question I have is, what exactly is a closing? The closing is the actual act of signing the paperwork where you would then own your home. So it takes around 2.5 hours, and you'll be doing a lot of signing, and then ultimately you will take ownership of the property on that day, and then have the keys as well. The next question I have is, where do closings take place? There are several places where a closing could occur. Most commonly, it is occurring either in your attorney's office, or the seller's attorney's office, or the registry of deeds where the property is located. There could be in a different location, but those are the three most common locations, and they are mutually agreed upon by all parties. Another question we have is frequently asked is, who will attend the closing? So typically, definitely you will be at the closing. You will be the new homeowner. The seller might or might not be at the closing. Your attorney will be at the closing, and the seller's attorney will be at the closing. Typically, we like to attend the closing to congratulate you, and also realtors will typically attend the closing. What if you don't understand something that's taking place in the closing? Well, a way to be proactive about that is to request a copy of the documents ahead of time. The documents in a closing are typically boilerplate documents, and it's pretty easy for you to get a copy of those in advance and review them. You also will have your attorney there who can explain anything. But the most important thing I want you to know is, if you do have a question, please ask it, because the worst thing is not to ask the question and then to be concerned about something that you signed or not understanding something important that took place at the closing. What do you bring to the closing? So what you should bring to the closing is 2 forms of ID, which typically would be your license and another government issued ID. You would be instructed by your attorney as to what forms would be acceptable, and you should also bring a checkbook. There are sometimes very minor adjustments between a buyer and a seller. For example, if you weren't sure if you wanted the swing set to remain and you decided you wanted it and they wanted $200 for it, you may pay for that at the closing. So that's basically what you would need to bring. So another question, and this comes up a lot, do you get the keys at the closing? The answer to that is yes. The seller's realtor will be at the closing, most likely, and will present you with the keys to your new home. Additionally, you likely have also done a walkthrough of that home that morning prior to the closing, so you may have the keys at that time, but typically you wouldn't have them until right after the closing occurs. What are the closing costs? Closing costs are costs that are incurred in the process of providing you with your mortgage financing. So some of the costs that would be included in that are appraisal fees, legal fees, recording fees, but these are all costs that would be disclosed to you well ahead of the closing and right from the get-go in the process. How are closing costs paid? So closing costs would be the costs incurred in going through the whole mortgage process, such as the legal costs and the appraisal costs, and those would be paid out of your funds. So in addition to the down payment, you need to be mindful that you should have funds for closing costs. There are some circumstances where a seller could help you with the closing costs, or there may be some other entity that might be able to assist, but the down payment and closing costs cannot be borrowed. They have to be your own funds. We also do offer, if someone is really tight on their funds, we do offer a no closing cost option with our mortgages, and most lenders do that. So in exchange for a little higher interest rate, we would pay the closing costs for you. And that works for some people too. So lots of options with that. How do we remit the funds due from us, which would be your down payment and your closing costs, to the credit union or to your lender at closing. Well, what typically happens is a few days before closing, you get the final amount that is required from you, and it is typically wired to the attorney's office, or a certified check is brought to the closing, depending on the attorney. Typically, the wire is the most common. So that would be due a few days before closing. That's when you would remit any funds due from you. I want to thank you for joining us and listening, and if you have any further questions, there are 5 of us here at the credit union that would be happy to meet with you to answer any follow-up questions from what you heard today, or anything else you'd like to talk about home financing related. We're located throughout the Harvard and Teaching Hospital community, and you can contact us via our website. Thank you.